section 3, chapters 2, 3, and 4 today. Chapter 3 starts off, if you are wrong, admit it. Let's see here, let me go to my notes. All right, chapter 2 in section 3, a sure way to make enemies is prove things people are saying or doing is wrong. In this chapter, he talks a lot about being wiser, but not actually telling people that you're wiser, leading them there gently. What do you guys kind of think about this chapter? What is some of your feedback on that perspective in talking to people?
So I used to do this for work a lot. They would call it professional skepticism. And you would just have to, like, somebody would show you something, you would look at it, we would know it's wrong, but we would have to, like, if you came back and said, this is completely wrong, you got to show me the right thing. Like this, they're just going to continue to try and show you as much as they can why the wrong thing is right, whereas I feel like if you play dumb a little bit, then it's like it's almost like yeah, it's wrong, but you don't really straight out say it's wrong. It's like, okay, why? I get that what you're showing me, but what and then what is it? I think he had a couple of examples where he would completely reassure the other person that they were right, but then instead of saying they were wrong, he would just ask a couple of questions, and then next thing you know, he would have the other person almost kind of fighting against him. It's like, oh, it's like, you're wrong. It's this, and now this is whatever it was that you were trying to predict, without actually just telling them, like, you're wrong. You're wrong. And it's like, it's funny that going about it that way seems to be um easier than, and I mean, it kind of explains, when you're trying to show someone they're wrong, they just want to show you that they're right. So they're gonna, even if they know you're right, they may still fight against you. I can't tell you how many times I've done it. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry I was late.
That's okay. That's okay. We are on section 3, chapter 2. So so in real estate, these are kind of like what he's talking about here is called guiding questions. And I always think of a listing appointment when I think of this, right? The seller thinks their house is worth $9 million. And I have to explain to them that it's not, and then get them to agree with me without pissing them off. And so in this chapter, a lot of what he's talking about is kind of giving data and having information that shows but doesn't point out. And that's exactly what we train on our listing appointments. Bring the data and then ask questions that guide that client down the path. Would you pay that for this house? After they've seen the data. And then they just can't argue with you.
I mean, it's kind of like, you definitely, like, it's, no one wants to be wrong, and even when they are wrong, right? So kind of, instead of trying to force the answer, listen, accept it because it's right, well, walking them down the path and allowing them to decide, oh, I got to do it this way. Oh, you know what? You are right. You should do it that way, right? Well, that was the whole point, of the conversation, is you wanted the end result, and you wanted to get them to get there on their own volition, which makes it that much easier for that to actually do the follow through, instead of saying, this is the way you have to do it, just because. Why? Because I said so, right? No one likes that being told, and they're much more applicable to make those type of changes, or acceptance or agreements, when they kind of get to that conclusion themselves. And so kind of the same thought process that you get through, getting through that process with them and giving those same leading questions that you came instantaneously to you. Now you need to kind of walk through them, and then you'll get a much better result. Sorry, there's something I want to say that it's blanking as far as how to express it. Maybe it'll pop in my head. I don't know, but it's not.
I
Got it. Well, in this one,
there's one thing that I wanted to kind of add for this chapter too. I really appreciated how he kind of pitched it as a more fun way to approach the situation as opposed to like fighting. Because when you fight, you're both gonna get riled up. But it's almost like when you kind of take the second approach, it's almost like, he just kind of talked about it like it was fun. And I was just like, that's a very interesting way to think about it. So I just kind of something I agree.
It is fun. Like I look forward to trying it on someone soon.
let's get your first listing appointment, and that'll be your first trial run.
I was gonna try it on my daughter. No, I'm just kidding. Start
That's
big.
so funny. That's so funny. Well, I love the story at the end of the chapter. Well, first off, I do think I want to read Benjamin Franklin's bio now.
Mhm.
I was like, okay. But I like the lumber story at the end, how he walks up and tries to get the person's perspective. Because a lot of times, I probably talk about this a lot, but my favorite quote is change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. A lot of times people argue from the perspective that they're arguing from because of the way they see the situation. And so I think when you walk up and get some information and get a little bit more understanding of where that person is, I think it's a lot easier to not argue with them from that perspective as well. And that's kind of what he talks about in the lumber story, right? He's not going to argue with the guy. Listen, we'll make it right. Just explain to me where you are. And I think at the end of the day, the guy was probably pretty happy that he got that training and that lesson,
Mhm.
because now he's not going to go make an ass of himself.
And lose a client.
Yes. So anything else on chapter 2, section 3? Chapter like 900, actually. Awesome. On to chapter 3. If you're wrong, admit it. So I think this chapter, probably most Americans struggle the most with this. I think most people have a really hard time admitting, because I think people feel like it's a sign of weakness. And in this chapter, I think he kind of proves it's a little bit more of a sign of strength. And the whole time I was reading this chapter, and he's, giving his stories and talking about how he thinks it's better to just listen, I'm at fault. This is what I did wrong. I'm an idiot. Like, scold me, ground me, punish me, whatever it is. I will take my ticket. My dog's off the leash. And he talks about how when you do that, it takes the other person off the defense, and they have nothing to argue. Like, they're like, you know what, you're right. Here's your ticket. Let's go. Or, you know what, you're right. You know what, let's just move on and let's not do it again. The whole time I was listening to this chapter, I was thinking about, not that I know much about Eminem at all. I don't, but I did watch like 5 seconds of the movie. And the part that I watched was like that battle where he like goes in and just totally rips on himself. And the other guy's like, fuck it, you won.
What movie was that?
8 Mile.
The Eminem movie, 8
8
Mile
Mile?
or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I guess like I said, I don't know much about him. I don't know much about anybody famous, but I guess in these rap battles, the purpose is to really put down the other side of the competition, right? You're an idiot, you suck, and here's why. And so the reaction is measure, I guess winning is measured by the crowd's reaction to the put downs. And so when Eminem takes the stage, I want to say like the first time he tries to put the guy down and he chokes, and he's like, fuck it, I know enough about myself to not choke. And so he starts kind of slamming himself for being what he thinks the other person is going to think is negative. And if I remember the movie correctly, the other person doesn't want to do that to himself. So he gets out there and he's like, I don't have better put downs than he did. He knows himself. And so the guy like drops the mic and walks off stage. And it was like a perfect example in my head of illustrating what he was trying to say in this chapter, that acknowledging your shortcomings, or it just puts the other person just totally on the offensive side of the conversation.
Funny.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, I mean, it's for sure. I mean, a sense of humility is definitely to your point, I mean, I think it takes a strong person to want to acknowledge your own mistakes, right? No one wants, the fact that anytime you're admitting, so yes, that is, I agree. I think that is a situation of strength, not of weakness, saying that you're, because unfortunately, nobody's perfect. And that is a true statement. There's no such thing. And even the person who has done everything correctly in the sense of they've succeeded in whatever field, right? A Warren Buffett, right? Financial investments, but he's not done. I mean, you never say, okay, yes, I've made trillions of dollars for myself and a lot of other people who've kind of piggybacked on me, but just doesn't mean I can't learn something. It doesn't mean that I can't make a different choice in something else in the future. And acknowledging that fact, and when somebody else, what is clearly a mistake or clearly a choice that maybe you could have done something differently, when you acknowledge it for yourself, I had a couple of choices. I made this one, it turned out negative. I'm going to make a different choice in the future. Again, nothing I was right or wrong, but when somebody wants to say, they just want to beat you up to the point of you agreeing, yes, you're right, I did make a mistake. When you come right off the beginning, I should have made a different choice. Well, the whole conversation that person wants to come at you for is all null and void at that point, because their goal, what they want is for you to agree with them that they're right and you are wrong. Well, you've already done that. So now you have a situation where, okay, well, let's get on to the meat and better conversations. I get it. Yep, I could have made a better choice. Let's move on. So it's very disarming when you take that humility on for yourself. And to your point, Laura, in regards to the movie situation, yes, I think that was the whole point of the movie. The rap battles is on to knock this person down, right? And the other participant, who's great, but meanwhile they weren't so great. Once it was say, only you can do is knock me down. If I've knocked myself down, I made a good rap about knocking myself down. Well, go talk about something else. Well, I don't know what else to talk about other than knock you down. You've just done it all. So I guess I have nothing, and you win. Right, shows the skill in that sense of Eminem in that situation of I can knock you out, I can knock you down, I can knock me down, I can knock this person down. I don't necessarily care. I'll rap and I'll do it in a good way, regardless of what I'm talking about. I have the skill set, and the only thing you know how to do is knock me down, and I can knock that down myself. So what are you going to talk about now? Nothing, right? And he won. So again, it's the same thing. Taking that into a business situation or other personal situations that it is. Definitely takes the wind out of somebody's sails.
Yeah, I think it was part of this chapter where it was the story about the lady who had to create a new commission plan for the thread company manufacturer, and how she came in and told them what was wrong with the other one and why this new plan is how it's going to work, and it failed. And then she came back again and asked the people, what did they see as failing, and basically guided her to her original solution. And it became their idea and their buy-in. And I think that's just a good reminder of how to get everyone to be on the same page. Is you gotta let them think it's their idea.
Yeah, I think in this chapter, so I like the dog example. He actually had I think it was like him, there was a dog, and then there was a cop. I think the first time they saw him, the cop kind of got mad at him. It's like, that's against the law, yada, yada, yada. Then the second time, I think he was just like letting the dog off for a moment. And then he saw the cop and he immediately jumped in and was like, oh my goodness, so sorry. This is unacceptable, yada, yada, yada. This dog should not have been off. I should have done better, yada, yada. And then I think the cop actually ended up kind of fighting against them for a minute. He was like, well, wait a minute. It's a small dog, he gets the law. It doesn't seem like it was that big of a deal. And, he just cuts him off and kind of continues. And Greg's point, it just completely disarms the guy. It's just like, I mean, what am I going to do giving this guy a ticket? He clearly knows the law. He didn't do anything wrong, Whereas the first time it was like, yes, you clearly did something wrong. So it's like, it's very interesting the way it disarms people.
I'm sorry, it sounds like my wall's about to fall. I'm not sure what Kyle's doing next door. He kind of concludes this chapter just about saying kind of what everybody else said, is that when you do this, it just takes the fight out of the other side. There's nothing else to argue with. And so if you're trying to influence people and win friends. I would say that is a good way to get there. Chapter 4, a drop of honey. If we talk, I'm sorry, I keep getting notifications, Craig.
Yeah. Chapter 4. I'm listening.
Was covering my words. A drop of honey. If we talk, we will get together. Be kind when addressing others, even if you are upset. Make friends out of enemies. Nagging does not work. This chapter, he talks a lot about how you treat other people and what that is going to do for your relationship. And he talks about, even if they're not your favorite person, he gives the example of the landlord story in this chapter, where I guess a bunch of people had gone. The landlord was going to raise the rent. He was like, nope, I can't do that. And everybody went to the landlord explaining, why it was awful and getting angry and just flat out not being nice to him. And this guy was like, nope, I'm not moving. I'm not raising my rent. And he goes in, and not only does his rent not get raised, it gets lowered. And it gets lowered to the dollar amount that he wants, because he goes in and he is kind and he is nice and he is compassionate for the other person's side. And I would say a lot of times, this chapter falls right in place with chapter 3. Not only do we not want to admit that we're wrong, but we also don't want to admit that the other person's right or have compassion for their side. Perceptions, they say, how you perceive things is how you're going to react to it. Well, I'm going to perceive something one way and somebody else is going to perceive it another way. I was talking to somebody today who I had no idea had quit her job, called her thinking she was still at her old job because I had a question, and found out that she had left the old company. And she was telling me about how she had taken care of her, turning in her notice that she was leaving, and she did it after she got her bonus. Well, her boss was angry, but she knew if she did it before she got her bonus, the boss was probably not going to give her the bonus. And so she waited, and it's like, well, the boss shouldn't have been angry. Boss owed her the money, and instead of looking at it from the employee's eyes, the boss looked at it from her eyes and was totally mean to the employee. And the employee was even willing to stay on and work weekends and make sure the transition was easy for her, but she was so mean that she couldn't see the error of her own ways. And I think a lot of us are that way. And I think that's kind of what this chapter is trying to explain, that, yeah, it sucks losing somebody. It puts you as a human in a bad position, but you can't get angry about that. There's a reason that person got there.
Yeah, I think this chapter emphasizes that, like, especially when you're negotiating, or if you're just, in a situation with another individual, you kind of have to just recognize that that other individual is not you. And it's like even in the story that you mentioned, the landlord story, it's like no one even thought to the fact that, you know, he has people complaining to him every day about minuscule stuff. Like what was it? One guy wanted to move out because the people above him were making too much noise,
Sure.
and then right, and was just giving him left and right, and then also wanted him to lower the rent. The reason the other guy got it was because he's just like, I can't believe someone here lives here and actually likes it. And it's just like, at the end of the day, he recognized there's another person in this situation. If I want something, I gotta at least soften him up, or soften them up, so it's like, I think that's kind of, this chapter is a really good reminder of, like, in whatever situation that you're in, you're always kind of working or collaborating with someone else, and they're just going to be different.
Do either of you guys have anything on chapter 4, being kind?
I think it goes along with the same thing. The last chapter, I think they do go well together. How do you get somebody to agree with your position? Well, you kind of be kind to them, walk them through the process, and without saying, "Oh, you're so wrong, you're so stupid," right? Hey, listen, here's my thoughts. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this? And as you kind of now, all of a sudden, you're kind of leading them, leading the horse to the water kind of phrase, if you will, the water being your answer that you want, but you want to get them to be able to make the decision for them. Now you can kind of say, oh, you can insult them, or you can kind of be more of a path of less resistance in the mental side of it, because that's what most people do is, regardless of whether you're right or wrong or indifferent, if you're kind of angry about it, if someone's gonna, if defense mechanisms go up and you're never gonna get through that wall, if you kind of start the process more of a amicable situation without, being so aggressive to some extent, negatively aggressive, you're gonna get the result much quicker. And even if you got it the other way, it's gonna be a lot more smoother moving forward, because that person voluntarily agreed to, as opposed to, yeah, I guess I got to do it this way because whatever's whatever. Was poisoning the relationship a little bit already.
Yeah, obtaining that buy-in from them and supporting them and be more of a partner versus the opposer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's a good point.
Willing participant as opposed to an unwilling participant. They're participating either way, but I much rather have the willing participant than the unwilling participant.
Yep.
Well, he makes a point that you should make your enemies your friends. And he kind of concludes this chapter by giving the wind sunshine story, where there's somebody, with a jacket on, he's out in the wind, and the wind is just trying to blow the jacket off, trying to blow the jacket off, trying to blow the jacket off. A few minutes later, the clouds come out. I mean, the sun comes out, the clouds go away, the day warms up, and the guy takes his jacket off, and the sun makes the point to the wind. Being warm and gentle, you kind of get what you want a lot faster than if you're harsh and cold.
That was such a good analogy.
It was.
So simple, but easy.
It really was. I agree 1,000%. All right. Anything else on our book this week?
I don't think so.
Okay. I think each of the chapters are truly short now for the rest of this section. So we can probably finish 5 through 12. It looks like it's right around an hour-ish of reading. Okay, so we'll finish up chapter 3.
Section 3, chapters 5 through 12.
Yes.
Sounds like a plan.